Alright, climate change. Climate change feels like that one friend you had when you were a kid that you remember like every 5 years, and you're like, man, whatever happened to John? I should reach out to him. But then you just never do, and you proceed to forget about him for the next 5 years. And that's basically what's happening now, because in the current climate of the world, where we have world leaders and people in power doing and saying terrible things, from the wars to famines to conflicts happening, there's so many different things that are pulling us in so many different directions that it's so hard to focus on our attention on the real climate crisis. And so the socio-political landscape has basically turned the climate crisis into an afterthought for so many people. And the consequences of this sensory overload of world crisis is clear. Our attention on a serious issue such as the climate crisis is being diminished. And whether intentional or unintentional, people in power understand that when our attention is diminished, we are unable to work together collectively to bring together sustainable change. Because one of our most powerful tools that we have as a people is our attention. One of the biggest tools that we have against corporations, against corrupt institutions, against bad leaders is our attention. It's our ability to bring together a group of people to fight for the collective good, to fight towards a common goal. When we're experiencing this sensory overload, that is diminished. Our ability to focus on one issue is diminished. And this sensory overload has led to a culture of inaction. And even worse, it is leading to a lot of climate protections being repelled or being removed, which is the exact opposite of what we need now when the climate is getting worse at a faster rate than ever before. And we're starting to see more observable impacts of the climate crisis from wildfires and heat waves across Europe, water shortages in South Africa. We're seeing more extreme weather conditions occurring across the globe. And what makes the climate crisis even worse is that the consequences of it are not shared equally. Most often than not, the most vulnerable populations are the ones who suffer the most. They are the ones who experience a lack of access to water. They're experiencing few economic opportunities because of the lack of economic growth. And when we look at the industries which are most vulnerable to climate change, we see that the most at-risk sectors are the services industry, which accounts for 50% of global employment, followed by the agriculture industry, which accounts for 26% of global employment, then the industry, which accounts for 24%. These industries are the lifeline for a lot of these countries' employment. And when you look at the people who are employed in these different industries, from the services to the agriculture to the industries, a lot of these individuals are people who are located in the middle to lower economic class bracket. And because climate change is linked to slower economic growth and lower economic development, the climate crisis occurs, human rights is significantly impacted. Because as people's access to critical resources diminished and governments begin to struggle to cope with the increased demand for social support, we see people's rights to life, to health, to housing, to a healthy environment begin to be undermined. And as people become more desperate for money and resources, we see the most vulnerable populations in society, such as women and children, become more easily exploited, resulting in unnecessary death and trauma. But the problem is, these are things that we already know, because scientists have done an incredible job in giving us all the information that we need to understand how this climate crisis works, to understand how climate change works, to understand how we can mitigate the effects. But because there's too much money tied in fossil fuels, because there's too much money tied in future projections, in our increased demand, in us pushing a very consumeristic society, we value increasing shareholder value and increasing GDP projections over human life. And because of this greed and this desire for more and more, which is unsustainable, we are already seeing so many cases around the world of, for example, in Brazil, where we are seeing high rates of deforestation of the Amazon, which is key in carbon dioxide emissions. We're seeing places like America where climate protections are being repealed and they're being removed in favor of fossil fuel production. We're seeing even in Africa, where we're seeing in like DRC, where the government is signing so many mineral extraction contracts with countries like the USA, with countries like Saudi Arabia and China and all of these countries at the cost of the local environment. And we haven't even gotten to AI and what that is going to do, where we are seeing the amount of water that the data centers that power this artificial intelligence. We're seeing already communities being destroyed because of it. And there are countless other stories of these same situations. And because we are so divided, especially as an international community, there's not enough attention being driven towards these cases. We're also seeing the wealth gap increase because we're seeing the middle class being literally pillaged. And without a unified response, it's almost impossible for this issue to be addressed. And despite everything I've said, there's still hope. Because firstly, the earth is really resilient. That is something that we can always count on. That is something that we can always rely on. The earth is resilient. And if we make choices, and if we do things that can slow, not even just to completely stop, but just to slow the rate of climate change, we will see the earth react to it. There's so many opportunities that we have to address this issue. And even if it seems bleak, there is still hope. Because as long as you care about it, as long as you are aware of it, that is a light that no one else can take away. And so, yeah, that is that. This is a very tough issue, but I think it's very important to talk about. It's very important to address it, because I think it can be easy for this to become an afterthought in the face of so many different other issues. But this is honestly one of the most critical issues that we have facing us as a humanity as a whole. And so, yeah, I hope that this has just this has been informational, just stirring in a way. Alright, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for however you've consumed this content. I will see you guys somewhere, somehow on one of these channels. Most probably I will see you guys tomorrow on The Path.